The Benjamin Dixon Show is only possible with listener support. Go to www.thebenjamindixonshow.com to register for our blog and join the Progressive Army.
Today is Tuesday, June 25th, 2019. Yesterday, Bernie Sanders came out and one-upped Elizabeth Warren's plan to cancel $50,000 worth of student loan debt. Bernie Sanders is saying he's going to cancel all $1.6 trillion of student debt. And of course, the way both of them are going to pay for their policies is by raising taxes on the rich, which is something to be applauded. That's the way to do it. A couple of really fatuous and stupid arguments against this policy have surfaced, and I want to kind of take today's episode and go through a couple of those because it just shows, and also the different sectors from which they come. I think that's almost as interesting as the arguments themselves. The people who are making them. Of course, you're going to have conservatives who are on against this, but you also have some quote unquote centrist, I guess. I don't know. Basically, some anti-Bernie Sanders people. Basically, I don't know if they're full-blown neoliberal centrists. Doesn't, even though the shorthand. I'm getting off on a tangent early on. The shorthand that we use for anyone we disagree with is generally to call them neoliberal centrist shills. Even though that's the thing, I'm not going to do that. I don't really know them well enough to know their politics, except these tweets and their arguments against something that would change the lives of millions of Americans who are saddled with debt. I mean, then it would change the lives of those of us who just basically are saying, we can't afford to pay. We won't pay at all because we can't afford to pay. So there's quite a few people who are in default because they just can't figure out how to get those bills paid. And first and foremost, let's just start by saying that anyone who takes the time to go to college in this country is adding value to this country. We are doing a service to and for this country. Because the more educated your population is, the more productive your society can be. The more productive your workforce is, the more money people make, the better capitalism works. You need an educated society. And so people who take the time out to go get an education, they in fact should be paid for that because we are giving something back to the nation directly. It's like almost like one for one. Every person that gets educated is an additional person in the labor force who can be capitalized on to make money. Profits. But the thing about American capitalism that has always been true is the fact that they're not satisfied with you being a productive worker helping them turn profits. No, they're not satisfied until they could drain every last penny out of your existence. Not only your labor, not only through taxation, not only through the profits that they make off of your labor, but they are not satisfied until they get your income, your revenue. The revenue that you make off of your labor, unless they can get that, they're not satisfied. So that's the note that's worth noting in this conversation when we discuss the fact that every person who contributes to the society by getting an education is actually advancing America and capitalism. And so why shouldn't it, at a minimum, why should not education be free in this country? Now that's just the philosophical underpinnings of the argument. On the flip side, it's just people, the $1.6 trillion. See, here's the thing. We have privatized the student loans. Like we have this impression that student loans are coming through the government. No, the government merely facilitates the lending. And we're talking about private institutions, banks, who are making the profit and charging the interest and capitalizing on your interest when you get a deferment, right? You get a deferment and say, okay, we're going to give you 6 months because you're on hard times. And they give you a 6-month deferment, but they still capitalize on that interest and add it to your principal. But it's not the government. It's not remotely socialized at this point. It's private industries, private banks being facilitated by the government, connecting them with young borrowers. when in fact the government should have created a system, and we should now create a system at this point where education is absolutely free. Higher education is absolutely free because of the net benefit that it gives our economy and our overall governing system. Period. The philosophical argument. Right? Now, just the plain political or economic, the political economic argument of $1.6 trillion being tied up, not being utilized in an efficient manner, not being utilized for investments, I'm going to make the argument from every angle. I'm going to make the argument from a socialist angle. I'm going to make the argument from a capitalist angle. I'm just going to make an argument from any angle. It absolutely makes sense to cancel this debt. It always has. Now, to be fair, not that I have to be, because I'm not really a fan whatsoever of the Green Party, but this is really what Jill Stein ran on last in 2016. Didn't get 1% of the votes, which is why I'm not a fan of them. They got to be able to do better than that. But I digress. It's not an original idea. Bernie Sanders' idea is not an original idea. It's been floated around. Jill Stein ran on it. Elizabeth Warren came out with a plan to actually accomplish it. And Bernie Sanders is saying, I'm going to do a whole lot more. Now, does he actually have the capacity to do this? Well, I mean, that remains to be seen, right? There's a lot of promises. And the real question is, like, if we get this guy into office based on all his promises, can he actually come through with it? I'm going to sincerely argue to every single one of you that no, he's not going to be able to accomplish everything that he's saying, because when has any president been able to do that? But this one in particular is so critical and is going to mobilize so many people that he absolutely better have a straight line path, a strategy, not only in terms of the actual policy, a written policy of how they're going to accomplish it, through, using our economic system, who are taxes going to be raised on? When will those taxes be raised? How are we going to facilitate this? How are we going to roll out of existence Sally Mae? All those components, right? But then he also better have an electoral strategy, a strategy to actually get the votes in Congress, rather, that he needs. All right. That being said, let me get back to the economic, the capitalist argument for it. $1.6 trillion in debt being tied up that, obviously it's not being used efficiently unless you are just completely satisfied with the financial markets, right? When we have a 75% consumer economy, it absolutely makes sense for you to release $1.6 trillion of debt and unleash that into the consumer portion of our economic equation. Better put, I didn't really say that well, but who cares? The point is, can you imagine what $1.6 trillion would do in this economy? The amount of jobs that will actually be created from that amount of wealth being freed up, and then people are then able to pay down other debt. I mean, if you are impressed with the debt markets and you feel like the best thing about capitalism is debt, right, and the interest that people can charge on it, and the profits that can be made from it, it's not like most people aren't still riddled with all types of other debt. It's not like they're going to just take this money and then just be completely irresponsible. A lot of us are going to be irresponsible. A lot of us are going to blow it on women and alcohol. But that's a part of our economy too. But if that's your fear, keep in mind there's a large portion of those people who have so many other types of debt that you can suck them dry from. You're just going to have to move out of the student debt market, get into the credit card debt market. So you got $1.6 trillion in debt that would be released, and people would be able to spend their money paying off other debts, catching up on their mortgage, catching up on their rent for landlords, catching up on their car payments, catching up on all the other really creative ways that you guys have created to suck our lives dry of any of the revenue that we earn from our labor. So, there's an opportunity for you. There's clearly an opportunity for you to still make your money the way you prefer to make your money. But then if you look on the consumer side of the equation, I mean, there's absolutely, the reality is if you want to grow the economy in the quote unquote capitalist sense, then fine. Let these people spend their money. Go to Best Buy and buy that laptop that they need. Go buy that equipment that they need and to invest in themselves to start their company. I mean, this system is, there's not a thing. I'm not sure that there's anything that we can actually do in this system and people not profit off of it. It's not like they're going to take this money and put it under their mattresses. I mean, even if they took this money and just put it into some, maxed out their IRA contribution, there are some capitalists behind it, ready to make a profit off of it. So there is no capitalistic argument against this because every dime that gets into the hands of the working class or the middle class is capitalized on in some form or fashion. There is never a capitalistic argument against putting money in the hands of normal people. We are not the ones who hoard it. We spend it because our lives depend on it. All right. So that's of course, the philosophical argument, the socialistic argument is one and the same. I mean, it's quite literally a contribution to our society, and so it should be free. Point blank, period. All right, so those are my arguments. So now the arguments against it, I've seen them come in several forms. Some are dumber than the others. Let's start with Newt Gingrich, former Speaker of the House. Newt Gingrich on Twitter. He basically said, if we're going to cancel all the debt, then doesn't that mean that we're going to have to pay people who have already paid off their student debt? And I'm like, that is a great idea. Thank you for making Bernie Sanders' idea even better. He thought that was going to be a way to convince us to not do this, because what are we going to do? Are we going to pay the Johnson family who took their entire lives to pay off their student loans? Are we going to just leave them hanging? Or are we going to write them a check too? I say we write them a check. That is a great idea, Newt Gingrich. These people, man. That's the scale of these arguments, right? Then there's another person. I don't even know. She's not really popular enough, I guess, to mention her name. But she's highly disliked. Ami Vanderpool on Twitter. She's not checked off, but she's very popular in her argument. Here's her argument. She says, quote, "I don't want to pay off student loan debt for rich people who can afford it. We should be selective in solving this problem. That is the only way to grow the middle class. Warren's plan has a way to do that. Bernie's does not." She preceded that by saying Bernie just stole this from Warren. Let's say that he did get the idea from Warren and he sat and thought, how can I make it better? This is absolutely effing better. I'm still with Warren on a whole lot of issues. And if we can't but it's never an all or nothing for me. I think having an all or nothing attitude is the exact opposite of reasonable in politics. You can't have, you literally get nothing. When you have an all or nothing attitude in politics, you literally get nothing. In fact, you get worse than nothing. You get Donald Trump. And you get tax breaks for the wealthiest. So even if we don't get Bernie's full-blown plan, I mean, I'll take Warren's plan because that helps. But I digress. To her point, to this Vanderpool's point, this has to be, and I said this on Twitter, and I'm going to say it again here like it's the first time I'm saying it. This has to be the stupidest thing I've heard since people who argue against $15 an hour minimum wage because, oh my goodness, McDonald's is going to raise the price of a quarter pounder. And so they spend their entire lives being a person who can benefit from $15 an hour. They spend their entire lives arguing against it because of their ideological and philosophical beliefs in economics that are based, economic ideas that are based in supporting capitalism. You have to be very clear about that. The economics that they teach us in school that I took and got a bachelor's degree in, it's 100% designed to keep people from ever thinking about a solution that does not benefit capitalism. But it is still dumb as hell. And here's why. If you look at two things. Number one, the $15 an hour example that I'm giving you. Have you noticed that over the last 5 years, every single year, the price of fast food goes up? And what happens to wages? Anyone? Wages have not gone up. They're stagnant. And so the price of our food, if your argument against $15 an hour is that the price of food is going to go up, well, the price of food has already gone up and it continuously goes up. And you know who gets the benefit from it? Not the workers. The capitalists, the owners. They're the ones who are getting the benefits through higher profits. So you cannot use that as an argument to say, oh, we shouldn't get $15 an hour because the prices are going to go up. The prices are already going up, moron. Likewise, I mean, that's how fatuous that argument is. And it reminded me of the Vanderpool argument, or rather the Vanderpool argument, the woman on Twitter, the argument that she made is as stupid as that. Because if your fear is that rich people are going to benefit from this, and we don't possibly want rich people to benefit from anything, we don't want them to benefit from getting their student loans paid out. Please tell me how many rich people, which is really a subjective term, like what is the threshold for rich? I'd argue someone in the upper middle class who makes maybe making $120,000 a year, they're definitely not rich. Those are the people who are going to take loans. But if we're really defining rich, what rich people do you know who are taking out student loans? Why the hell are they going to take out student loans when they just paid $10 million for an endowment? They just donated $25 million to have their name on a building at the university. Their kids, they could pay off $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 a year to go to Harvard. Gosh, that's nothing. We're gonna put $150,000 on top of that. So that little Vanderpool. That's funny. I'm using the same name. Hey, hold on. Let me look at this. I need to look her up. Because Vanderpool is a rich ass name. The name of the woman who made that argument on Twitter against rich people, her name is Vanderpool. And that was like the first name that came to my mind to I was going to say Maximilian Vanderpool was what I was going to say. And Vanderpool is one of the richest sounding names in the country. Like, I guarantee you, this Alexis Ami Vanderpool, she probably comes from a very wealthy family, and she's using this as a way, and wait, let me finish one thing. She's from a really wealthy family who has stocks in Sallie Mae, has investments in Nelnet student loans. And so she's out here pretending to be against rich people in order to sabotage this cancellation of student debt because it's going to mess up her money. Vanderpool. The hell? Why would Maximilian Vanderpool have to take out student loans when his father, Maximilian Vanderpool I, just donated $50 million to Harvard University? Come on. That is, man, I really hope that America is not this stupid to fall for these ridiculous arguments. And then last but not least, people are like, oh, if you're going to pay off, this is like the standard conservative argument. If you're going to pay off the student loans, then what about the people who didn't go to college? And what about the people who went to college and they paid it off themselves, or, they were responsible and they took care of their own personal responsibility, and all of that. We regularly take on projects in this country where not every single American is a beneficiary directly, but indirectly, we are. Take, for example, the military. All the money that goes into defense contracting is not directly beneficial to every single American. But a conservative would argue that the safety that we get from our military is an indirect benefit, so we should still pay our taxes. Same thing with public school. People who are renting in public school districts, they are they are the direct beneficiaries of public schools, even though they're not paying their taxes into it. The families who live on my block, who don't own their homes, The homeowners are paying for their students, for those kids to go to school, not the parents who are renting the homes. So it's never been a requirement in America to have a one-to-one direct benefit in order for us to institute a program, a policy. Come on, people. Don't fall for the okie doke. Don't fall for these really lazy arguments. Some are more crafty than others, and I think that Ami Vanderpool is trying to protect the investment of her father, Maximilian Vanderpool I, who clearly must have investments in nil-net student loans. All right, that's it for today. I'm not going to go any further. No need. That's it. Cancel my student debt. Burn Sally Mae down to the ground. I'll see you tomorrow.
The Benjamin Dixon Show is only possible with listener support. Go to www.thebenjamindixonshow.com to register for our blog and join the Progressive Army.